I am just setting up my phone so I can answer your comments. Good morning, everybody. I hope y'all doing well. I am excited to have all y'all online. I noticed that there's quite a few people just looking at the chat. We have Northern California represented by Sandy. Thank you. Awesome. Fausto is here. So nice to see you guys. New York City. I'm actually, I lived on the East Coast most of my adult life, actually, from Long Island, worked on Broadway over at Morgan Stanley. So yeah, finance in my background, but do miss the entertainment over there. Nice to have you guys back. Today we're going to talk about Project Online, believe it or not, in our next Connector series. I'm going to give you a few tips, and I'm also going to help you think about two ways of using it. So you can use Power Apps with Project Online from a consumption perspective, like from the perspective of, let me just see what I have there. And then from a process perspective to create projects and or tasks. So I want to show you how to do both of those things, and I hope I have enough time. So if I run out of any time, we'll have a part 2 next Monday, and we'll still get it all done. All right, so I'm going to get started by sharing screen. Go ahead and drop your questions into the comments if you have them. I'll be watching them. We'll also have a couple of people from the Connectors team joining in to help. So this will be great. So I'm going to start sharing screen. And I just want to give you a little bit of background on Project Online. So Project Online, sometimes called Project Web Apps or PWA, is an additional licensing in Office 365. So what it gives you that, say, Planner doesn't give you, or say Trello doesn't give you, is advanced portfolio management. And what this means is, as opposed to just managing projects, you're actually managing how you decide what projects to do and when. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of drive your project prioritization and your project delivery based on, what's important to your business, as well as what availability you have from a resource perspective. So just kind of walking through these 7 key steps, right? When you're doing portfolio management, most companies will start by determining and setting business drivers. And let me just see if I can bounce over to Project Online. Let me know if you don't see my screen, please. Bouncing over to Project Online, and I'm going to go to what's called the Project Center here. So in Project Online, when I'm in my Project Center, I actually see all of my projects. And this is what I mean by portfolio management. You see them all. So your whole company might be driving projects in here. Now, this is a demo site, so it just has demo data in there. This isn't Microsoft's projects or anything. But think of how wonderful it would be to see everything going on in your business from here. Now, we did implement this at Microsoft many years ago when it first came out, I remember, and we did it by like division. We didn't have all of Microsoft's projects in here, actually. We had we had project sites for each division or for each group of people that needed to magic projects. So it can be an enterprise level thing or an organizational level thing or a departmental level thing. So it depends on how you want to roll up your projects. But in order to determine what projects you need to do, you need to kind of decide what drives my decision, right? What determines what projects I'm going to do? And that's when we talk about business drivers. And we decide in those business drivers what's important to each one as far as how we calculate the prioritization of these different projects. And then based on how we do this algorithm for calculating the value of our drivers, then Project Online helps us to prioritize our projects and to push them into the workforce so that they get done, or to move them out if you don't have enough resources or if you don't have enough money. It helps you kind of decide what projects to do. Okay. Now, once you've decided what projects you're going to do, then people are going to be submitting requests. So they're going to go to some place in your site and they're going to submit requests. Now, in this case, I'm going to actually be using the hub for that in Project Online. But basically, you can submit requests from any SharePoint list you'd like to permit, because Project Online sits on top of SharePoint Online. So you can definitely take advantage of all the SharePoint goodness when you decide what you're going to use for your intake form. Somebody usually approves that. And then after the idea or the project itself is approved, then you build a schedule where you actually put together all your scheduled items. This will come first, second, third. And then the different things that you have in your schedule, or the different tasks that need to be accomplished, will need to have resources to do them. And then those resources need to get busy doing them. And then as they do them, they'll be doing their timesheets to say how much time they spent. And people will be approving timesheets to get them paid. And then executives and all other kinds of people will be reviewing the dashboard and reporting on what's happening. You get all of that basically out of the box with Project Online. And Project Online is one of those applications that is very rich. So I'm not even going to pretend that these connectors will do everything that Project Online does. It will not. But the Project Online connector is in preview, which means that when you add it to your apps, right, it's going to be something that you can give us feedback on. If you want something else in the connector, you just have to tell us. Okay, so let's go out to our hub. I'm going to go back to Project Online and I'm going to the intake form, right? So this intake form is just like any other SharePoint intake form, and you design your intake form based on what you want to do. Being that this is a list on SharePoint, guess what? You'll still have your form settings. You'll still be able to do Power Apps forms, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a custom form. And in this custom form, we're going to enable the user to create a project directly from the form. Okay, so basically here, and this is how you get started. I think earlier I had already customized the form, so I was expecting it to pop up, but it's not going to pop up until I customize it. So I'm going to go ahead and do customize forms. And it's going to bring me into the canvas where I can customize this form. Understand that this is a unique forms experience that you may or may not already have seen. But this forms experience is integrated into SharePoint. It's not the same thing as if I had said create an app. And when I say create an app, I get a 3-screen app with the basic screens of list, detail, and edit. In this case, I basically just get a form. And if you notice here, on the left, I have something called SharePoint integration, which is paying attention to what happened on SharePoint. Did they press edit? Did they press new? Did they press view? How did they interact with the item? And keeps track of what item they're interacting with. This is really important for this scenario here. And then they have the back to SharePoint here, which kind of tips you off that you're not in a normal Power Apps 3-screen app. You are in a customized form on SharePoint. Now, a lot of times we'll say you're not in a typical 3-screen app, but in essence, you could add as many screens as you want. It's not like you only get one screen. It's just that it defaults to one screen because it assumes that you want to edit that form. You can always add more screens to any form. Now, what I'm going to do is also point out that not only can you add more screens to any form, but you can add more data to any form, right? So we're actually going to add a data connection, even though we could add any amount of data we want. So here's a tip to you guys. Have you ever needed SharePoint with, say, Dynamics or SharePoint with SQL? You can just customize the form and then add those data sources to your form and add controls that have both. And so you can give your user more context this way. So I'm going to actually add the Project Online connector here. Now I have one here. I'm in a demo tenant. That's why I'm called admin somebody. But if you don't have the Project Online listed as already a connection, you can just click New Connection, and they are in alphabetical order. What I want you to notice is that when you find Project Online, it has a little light bulb on it. And that means this connector is in preview, which means we really would love to hear your comments. So please, if you can, after this webinar, give it a try. Let us know what you think, what's missing, and we'd be glad to get it in there. You do that in the Ideas Forum, all right, in the community, versus under this video. It's better if you do it on the community. All right, so I already have the connection, so I'm just going to select it. And now I have both, okay? Now that I have both in here, and, you know, in some cases I have done this and I needed to also have the Office 365 Users Connector if I want to get involved with people, but I don't right now. I'm keeping this simple for this first webinar. But again, we can have more of these if you want to go deeper into Project and what it can do. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing is getting rid of some fields on this form. I don't want as many that are here, and I actually want a little bit more space too. So I'm going to get rid of some of these. And then after I get rid of some, I think I might also wrap it a little bit. And then I'm going to span the title and the description column. And then another thing I like to do is make my description column a little bigger. So little things like that. I'm not going to do a lot to this form because many of you have come for the project integration. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this card too. And I'm going to make this whole form shorter because I'm going to put a button under this form. All right, now the first thing I want to do is grab the site where my project, where my PWA site is. So literally, I'm just taking the PWA site path, and I'm going to go back to Power Apps, and I'm actually going to put this in the onVisible property as a variable, and I'm going to call this set project site. And then I'm going to put that URL in quotes. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of storing the site URL so that I can use this site wherever I might need to in my formulas. Now, by the way, I have lots of notes for you. Don't feel like you have to write this stuff down. I have all of the formulas all outlined, and they will be attached in the community. So under this video, you'll have a link and you'll get all of these formulas. You don't need to remember them all, okay? So one thing I want to do is just go to there. All right, so now I've set a variable for my thing. I'm just going to add a screen just to bounce back to there so that the onVisible property launches for this demo. So now that's been stored in there. Now I want to create a project, right? So I'm going to insert a button. I'm going to take the button down here. I love how if I just drag around, it kind of centers itself or helps me center because of those lines. And I'm going to call this button something pretty logical, like create project. Okay, and you would imagine in real life, this button may only be visible to a few people on your team, or maybe it's visible to everybody in the engineering department, any number of things. This is a sensitive button. You might even have it disappear after it's been used or after the project is found, that kind of thing. But today, again, I'm keeping it simple. We're going to create the project using the Project Online connector, and it has something very simple called create project. In every case, guys, whenever you're building from a non-tabular data source or even a tabular data source, look up and you'll find your syntax is right up here. And I'm going to point out where sometimes we don't do a good job of giving you syntax, and I'm going to actually be very transparent about that and let you know how we're planning on fixing it and what you can do in the meantime to help yourself. All right. So it needs the site URL. And remember, I put that in a variable just a couple of minutes ago. I called it project site. And then it wants the name of the project. I'm going to name the project what is up here at in the title field. And basically, I have a choice. I can use the SharePoint integration, or I can use the title field. The only reason I would choose to use the control is if I plan to create the project the moment the form is made, which in real life would never happen. You basically create a project and then you approve it and then you create. So I'm going to use the SharePoint integration. So I'm going to use SharePoint integration, which tells me what is currently selected and saved on SharePoint, right? So in this case, I want the name, so I'm going to use the title. Okay, so basically it's asked for two simple things. Give me the site URL, give me the project name. That's how easy that is, right? Now I'm going to basically save, bring this back to SharePoint and save. So I saved and publish. And when you save and publish a custom form, it takes you right back to the list. And the thing is, all of these projects exist. So let me just make a new project webinar. This is my description. My budget cost is 10,000. My benefits is 20,000. And Audrey's just making up stuff in her head. Start date is the 15th. And I don't think I put that in there, did I? I want to. So let's customize. Let's go back and let's see if we can put a start date in our project. Okay, might as well be nice and neat and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and select that button, which I should rename button, BTN create project. And then I should be able to get parameters here. So to test to see if you have parameters on any function, which is really easy to forget, is you hit the comma key and then you'll see the parameters that'll pop up, right? So there are two parameters here involved in this function that I can add, right? Description, text, and start. And so I'm going to go ahead and open a squiggly, right? And choose description. And then I'm going to use, again, SharePoint integration to get the description right out of the list, right? So the selected, and then the description. I believe it was called description. I guess it was called product description. And then comma. And then the second thing I'm going to add is the start date. And I also am going to use SharePoint integration for that because there's a field for that. So I'll just do selected dot, and there should be estimated start here. EST start. All right, and then I choose that. So now if I drop this down, I can see this better. FYI, we're working to make this easier to read as well. But you notice that I have two parameters in here and they came right out of the syntax. And this is what I mean. 9 times out of 10, guys, when you're working with a non-tabular connector in Power Apps, if you hit the comma at the end of the normal syntax and then open a squiggly, you will actually see the parameters that you can send along with that request. Now, there are times, like you'll see, I'm going to show you the create task version, where we don't give you all the parameters. And I'll show you what you would do in that case, even though we are definitely going to fix that. So I'm going to do back to SharePoint and save and publish. What's interesting is what I'm showing you right now about how to use the syntax and how to get the parameters, it applies to anything, not just the project online connector, any connector this applies to. So I'm just going to create a new one, and I'm going to call this my webinar test. And this is my description. And of course, this can be longer than that. So I'm just going to put a bunch of those in there. Budget cost is 1,000. Budget estimates is 2,000. The risk is medium, and the estimated start date, let's put this as March 29th and say okay. All right. Now I'm going to save this because remember I use SharePoint integration, so it's going to look and see what's saved on SharePoint. And then I don't think I want to edit anything. This risk I'm not actually using, but I'm just going to click Create Project. You'll notice that the project icon will go gray. I just want to go back to our project list in a project. Let's see, what did I do with that list? All right. And keep this tab open. And you'll notice there's a new project here called My Webinar. If I go to the project details of this, you'll see that it was last modified this morning. So I didn't cheat and do it in advance. And it's got the name, it's got the description, it's got the start date, and it kind of has its defaults, right? Now, that's how simple it is to create a project. It's no big deal. Now, I just want to go back to that formula again, and I'm going to show you this in the PowerPoint here. Right here, just gonna, can I zoom in and zoom out? Okay, I'm gonna close that up and then zoom out a little bit here. So you can see this formula really big and up close, really not hard. You're using the create project formula. And then you're passing the URL. Now you could pass it just like this, you could spell it out, right? I chose to put it in a parameter because in a variable, in a global variable, just to keep it. I might need it later on. I also have used SharePoint integration whenever I wanted to get information from the SharePoint list, right? I could use SharePoint integration and then select it to get any of the fields from that list and use it in the requirements. In this case, the project name is the requirement right here. So I could go ahead and use that title, or I could type my own title. It doesn't, it's up to me what I want to do. And then I have, if I did the comma and the squiggly, I can get description and then go ahead and then pass the description and the start date. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any other type of variables today, but any other types of parameters. So if you see the business need for other parameters, then you should let us know in the forum ideas, okay? Now, in the same way, I can create a task. Now, you'll notice that if I want to create a task, I need the ID of the task. And you guys kind of learned this from the last connector series video on Planner. When you want stuff out of the thing that happened last with connectors, you need to put what happened into a variable so that you can get a response back on it. Okay, so in this case, we need to know what the project ID is in order to create the project, in order to create a task. So if I just change this statement to being set first, and then we call this response or project ID response. Bad idea to type in front of a word. I'll hit a comma first. That's a best practice. Hit a comma first before you start typing. Otherwise, you might delete stuff. Project ID response is going to be what gets back. So this is the response from creating a project. So if I go to the project online documentation, which you will also have in the list of formulas and stuff that I'm going to give you, I'm also going to give you the actual apps that I did. So don't feel like you've got to memorize this either, because you'll have the apps. Now, the only thing is the apps are not going to work in your world unless two things. Unless one, you have Project Online, and two, you replace the connector. You replace the connections with your own. And I'll talk about that at the end. So notice that if I just go in here and say create task, new project is the first one we did. When you create a new project, which is what we did first, it returns this body called project. If I click on that, it tells me what I get back out of that project after I've created it. So any number of these things come out of that situation, right? When I'm creating a project. All right. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go back here. Make sure I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to make a new form so you can see. Okay. New. And I'm going to call this test project 100. And who cares what the description is or the budget right now? We have all the money we need in the world. No limitations. And let's start this project also whenever we want. And I'm just going to save it. This will enable me to go ahead and show you what happens. So I'm going to customize. It's probably going to give me a different one. I think it gives you the first one sometimes. So what I'm going to do here, the problem is I want to show you from scratch, and these projects exist. So let me go into Project Online and just remove this first project, which is, I think, these two. This is a demo site, so I'm not deleting anybody's project in real life. Okay, so now I have those gone. And I'm going to go back into my situation and over here. And I want to just add another button. So we're going to insert another button here. I could have copied and pasted the one that I had as well. I'm going to zoom in. And this is going to be my create task button. And you can line things by clicking on them and then doing home. And then you have your PowerPoint tools right here to help you align things. I'm actually gonna, this is button create task. And I'll open that up and we'll call this create task. Okay, so basically, and this is something that, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this. You can see. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to zoom out a tad bit here. See if I can create this project. Now, if I try to create a project that's duplicate, I will get a nasty little red error message that says the project exists. That's a server-side error message. It's totally expected. And that's because you can't create a project with the same name in Project Online. So you have to respect your schema in Project Online, just like you need to respect it in SharePoint or anywhere else, right? If you don't, you're going to get some error messages. So what you might want to do is do some data validation before they press it to make sure everything that you need is there. You could even query the titles and check and see whether they exist or not. So I'm going to click on Create Task here. And I'm going to go ahead and do Project Online, create task, and I hope you can see this. This is create task. Now, in the syntax, again, what do I need? I need the project ID, right? Now, where is the project ID? Remember, we created the task, right? But how do we get the project ID? We use that. We use the response. So remember, I set a global variable. That variable holds all of the details from the body or response. Remember, if you want to check what's in the response, you use the docs here, and you'll find out what's in the response, okay? You'll check what's in the response, and then I know for a fact that the ID is in there, okay? Don't confuse yourself with the ID versus the project identifier, which is a different thing. Those of you who know Project Online understand the project identifier is like 5 digits, and it's not it. So you want the ID. And then the other thing you want, and you saw when I hit that dot, just how much stuff I got back in my body. It's a bunch of stuff, right? Including project type. Okay, I'm going to take ID, and then I'm going to get that site URL, which I have stored in my global variable. That's optional. You could paste it right there. And then it says parameters. And this is where we fall down a little bit. So we didn't give you any parameters for this, right? So you got to figure out what are the parameters of this, right? Now, you can sort of figure it out if you go to the documentation and you go to create new task, and then it tells you what the required parameters are, but it doesn't actually tell you how to write them, right, in the formula. So that's a little bit of a challenge. Now, what you could do, and this is something I have done before, is I will search the templates in Flow for Project Online. Okay, Project Online. And sometimes it will help me if I see, if I see it in Flow, then I can figure it out what it is. And this is something I promise you, we're getting this fixed. It's just in the meantime, how do you do this? Let's do my flows. Let's just create from blank. And then I'll search for planner. Project Online. Right, keep getting mixed up. And Project Online. And I'll want a new create new task. So it's got to be in the actions, create new task. And probably my trigger needs to be Power Apps. So hold on, Power Apps. Let me see if I can get that to pop up. Probably not, because I'm not in Power Apps. Let's get a trigger like email. It doesn't matter what trigger I use. I'm just trying to get to, like, how do I get that action? What are the parameters in that action? So let's see, how can I cheat here? Let's take this and copy it. I already know the answer to this. I'm trying to show you how to figure it out on your own. So you go insert, let's do action. Let's try flows. Let's create a new flow. This gives us a trigger right away. The trigger is the button in Power Apps. And now I can add an action for the Project Online. And then create new task. And now you see these things here. So you actually could, at this point, instead of writing our function, you could do exactly what I did, create a new flow, and then ask for everything that you have in your Power App. Just ask for it in Power Apps. And then you can easily just do it this way, right? So let me see, sample notes. I'm just gonna put this ask, and I don't have a duration or a note field that I could use in Power Apps right now. So that's why I typed it. But if I did, I could do that. And then I can say task duration is 4. Now, this is a kind of a cheat way to do it because we don't have the parameters there. But I have the parameters for you. So let me show you. So create new task is this right here. And I'm going to go back to Power Apps. And I'm going to go to my onSelect statement and put this in here. And let me just show you what it is. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters, okay? Parameter number 1 is the actual name of the task, which you could get from Power Apps if you have it. from SharePoint, if you have it, you could just have a field called task name. But in this case, this is a project form, so it doesn't have the task name. So I could put a task name here. I could put a duration. I could put a notes, and I could put the start date. And that is the entire formula for creating a task. So I don't want to run out of time. I want to show you the other piece of this, which is the consumption level. But I want to come back to this. You'll let me know if we have time to come back to this, either at another webinar or today. But one thing you could do other than this, just to give you some other ideas, is if you have a particular project template, right? Then you can use that template using Flow, and then your schedule will be created. So when you create a new, sorry, I didn't mean to click that. I didn't mean to click it. Hold on. My mouse is acting up today, the Bluetooth. Add an action. I'm going to choose Project Online. And I can create a new project. So when you're creating a project in both Power Apps and Flow, you basically can choose the project name, the project description, and the project start date. Okay. But if you look at all of those actions for create a project, if you look at all of these actions here, you have all of these different things, but you also have these 4 triggers, right? So see if you can follow me. If, right, you can set up a situation where your projects are coded in their name, right? Since we can't get to the template from these triggers, from these actions, what you could do is do a new project, and then on the creation of the new project, trigger a particular set of tasks. Right? So this trigger here, when a project is created, right? From there, you could add in conditions, right? And then you could actually pull together your entire schedule, which I did at Data Insights last year. You can see that video on YouTube. I actually did create the entire schedule just using Flow. But you have to kind of create a trigger-based scenario where you could kind of get some conditions from your title, because we don't have that trigger about project type in here yet. Again, if you think you want it, let us know and we'll add it. All right. Now I want to go back and kind of, before I run out of time here, time just flies when you're having fun. Go ahead and publish that. And I want to go back to Power Apps and just show you the consumption side of this. So what if you just wanted to have an app for your executive staff, for them to be able to kind of look up projects? And so this is, this app is connected to my Project Online site, and it's returning all the projects. And then from picking a project, you can drill down into the project, into the task, and kind of see what their % complete is and so forth. You can even get to a place where you can get more details about that task. Now, I want to do a separate video on this for you guys, and probably will be a Friday's Function video this week. But here's my challenge to all of you. You have to complete this challenge before Friday in order to win the swag, okay? If you notice here, I've got a little bit of a Gantt chart here. I've got a start date and an end date, and then a little green bar that's configured to be somewhere on this Gantt chart based on the start and end date and how many days are the project is taking and the % complete. So I'm doing a little bit of math here. And in this one, I don't think we have a duration, but if one of them has a duration, you would be able to see it. If you can figure out how I did that little green bar, then you can win some swag. So let me give you some tips on that green bar. It just basically, and I can open this up in Power Apps. Basically think of a rectangle standing straight up on top of a rectangle laying down. Okay, now the rectangle laying down has a width, and the rectangle standing up has an X position and a Y position. How could you configure that so that this sits in the right place on the bar? These are just rectangles, right? And it's under the timeline group here. I have two rectangles underneath here. There's a rectangle right here, and there's another rectangle below. Yes, and there's a separator rectangle. But there's three. But these two are the two I'm talking about. Can you figure out how I did it? In the meantime, let me show you how I did the rest. So if you wanted to get all the projects from your projects online site, again, the setup is the same. In my on visible property, up for my screen, I put couple things. I put the site address so I could use this project sites later. And I put something here for filters, which we will do this another time. We don't have time today to go into the filter, but I actually did my types here, and then I can filter by them down here because I do get project types returned back in the body, even though I can't set them in the connector. All right, so then on my gallery here, we just call this gallery projects. I have an items property, and it's very, very simple. To list all the projects in projects online, you just do the project site and value. So I just do that from scratch here. So you can see, I can go into a basic template screen. You don't have to do anything fancy. In the template screen, I select the gallery. And then I set the items property of that gallery to the formula project online list projects. And then I need to put the URL right here. At that point, I can change the layout, so to speak, the layout to be just the title, right? And I can choose the title or the name of the project here. So you see how simple that was. And anything else you want, so let me just copy and paste this so that we have underneath that. Sorry about this mouse. We're going to do here a dot, and you'll see all the things that come back from the connector as far as what's available from project. I have worked with this, and sometimes they don't come back clear. So if you have any problems, please let us know. All right, you can even get the project ID here. And so that's how easy it is to get a gallery of the projects. How do you get the gallery of the task, right? So let's call this demo projects list. All right, and then I'm going to make a new screen for my tasks. Okay, and again, I put this all in the list of things so that you could look them up later on. So I'm going to just go down here and get this one. Now, this one has a little bit of a fun thingamajiggy in it. Let me just show you that. This is the gallery task. Okay, let's do this. Name and % complete. Notice how I kind of fill out the text that people need to see. And then the item for this, so I don't want to use gal products, so I want to use demos project list. So if you look at this, I want to change this to demo projects list because this is our demo as opposed to my original one. You just want to make sure you check to make sure an ID is selected, it's not blank. And then you can, after you find out which ID it is, you just replace it with the gallery name here. So you would have to check and see what your gallery name is. That's why I'm doing it over. So you can see what you'd have to replace, right? And you'd replace everywhere it says project site with the name of the project site. I mean, the URL for the project site. In this case, I put that in a global variable, so it's available to me. So now when I go back to the, close this up, demo projects list, I can make this guy here go to the last screen, which I can do that through the action menu, navigate to screen 2, it fills out the formula for me. And then if I pick a project, it will give me the task for that project. That's how easy it is. I mean, this is easy peasy stuff. Now, it gets interesting when you want to do fancy stuff like me, right? So you want to start making dashboards that get in all complicated and, you know, start doing this kind of thing. You definitely can. It's just a matter of knowing how to look it up. So, and it's not like it's complicated. So if I go into my task detail here and I go into, let's go into status detail. And I do rename stuff because otherwise things gets really complicated, right? If you don't rename your fields. So my percent complete is just, that's just a form right there. And I actually tell the form item to this item percent complete is what goes in there. And then I use things like this, like I concatenate text behind it, right? And then for editing this, I would have to create a form to go under my pencil. And I haven't done that yet, but we're going to do that the next time we talk. So the Friday function video that's going to talk about some of these editing things will actually show you how to do the edit icon. But it's just a matter of it's really not a lot of functions you have to worry about to do this kind of thing. So I put them all on this slide here just to kind of walk you through them. So this top one here is basically where I am setting the project site as the variable. If I want to do filters, I would do that in a collection probably for the project type, since it's can be challenging to get them. I can get them in a gallery, but it's an interesting game we could play one day together. It's fun. Then there's create project, and this one's really easy too. So getting the project into the variable, really easy. Creating the project, super easy. The thing to remember is comma squiggly, right? And I guess that's a squiggly, will give you your parameters most of the time. As you remember, when we did create task, we didn't have our squigglies, and that's really our bad. And we plan to fix it so that you can figure out, you know, what are the parameters here. But you can go look at the parameters in Flow. Sometimes they're a little bit easier to see. And or you can reach out and post a question on the forum and we'll put them in there, right? So as you can see here, the parameters for create task, these are the ones that are not written anywhere. This information that I'm showing you right now is not documented anywhere except for this webinar. And we need to fix that. And that's not your bad, that's ours. You can see the different parameters here that you can use to set your task properties, okay? Then when you want to just list the project, which you saw in the second consumption video I did, that's like even easier than all the rest. Super, super easy. You list the projects. I think I typed it twice here. Just by putting the URL of the site, you can use that for listing projects. This is list projects. Then this one I used in the task gallery. And the reason why I did the is blank, in case you're wondering, is because I was getting an error because of some type of latency that was going on. So to avoid that, I just kind of set it. I kind of set it if it's blank, right? But it hardly ever uses it because there's very few projects with 0 task, although that could actually occur. So you also would need it for that reason. If the task, if there's no project ID available, no, I think this is only latency, because there's never a situation where you clicked on something in a gallery and it doesn't have an ID. But I was finding I was getting an error message when I didn't use is blank. So I added is blank at the recommendation at one of the guys in the connector team that was very helpful to me. As usual, my hero is always Samir. And if that's blank, then it just goes ahead and gives you back the task. And that's very easy. List tasks is just the project ID and the project URL. And then it goes and it looks for the task for that project ID. And in this case, it was in a gallery, so I could get that ID. And it's the exact same thing if it's not blank. And it's just to protect from that error message that I was getting due to latency. And then here is like somebody might want to know how I calculated the number of days the project lasted, which is different from the remaining duration, right? Just the number of days the whole project lasted. Then I did a date difference function, which is a function, I don't know if I've done in Friday functions yet, but that's a great one to keep your hands on. It takes a start date and an end date, and then calculates how many days in between. So I think that's it. I'm going to reach out for questions now and see what questions I have in the chat. Oh, Samir's on board answering questions. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead and throw them in the chat. If you don't have any questions, oh no, Nando thought we we're going to start in 7 minutes. We're all done. You know what it is? I think it's this time change. We just recently had a time change that I almost missed this morning too, because I have a clock in my room that isn't looking at the internet. So I just about was an hour late myself. So anybody, I don't see any other questions. So then I'm going to let you guys go. You get a whole 7 minutes. Now, don't forget, there's a challenge. There's a challenge to figure out how I did that Gantt chart in the consumer-based app. And if you figure it out and post that either on the community in the webinar gallery, if you want to record a video, or you could do it on Twitter if you think you figured it out. Stacy says she doesn't have Project Online. Well, a couple of choices you have. One, you could take a trial version. It's worth trying out. Or you could try this using a SharePoint list where you have a start and end date and a remaining duration in the list. If you have a task list with a start and end date and a remaining duration, you can make that Gantt chart as well. So if you can post a short video on how you did that, and I'm looking at the camera now, I'm tired of looking at I'm looking at my phone because I'm looking at your questions. But if you can figure it out, you're going to get some nice Power Up swag. I might even give you some Flow swag too, if you use Flow, because we'd love to see you using both of the products together whenever you can. But we'll be fixing this so that you can just use Power Apps or you can choose to use both, okay? So it's really great showing you this today. One of the tools I love is Project Online. I really love project management in general. It's a topic that stayed with me over the years. And even if you're agile, sometimes Project Online is useful for prioritization. If nothing else, it helps to drive those business drivers into why and when you do projects and to double check you have people to do them. So I think it's a great tool, and I look forward to seeing what you can do with Power Apps and Project Online. Let me know if you want a part 2 of this, and I can go real deep because this is fun stuff for me. Have a great day and happy Power Apping.